My involvement in this research development is as a researcher, as a practitioner, and with an interest in dance of the African diaspora, or black dance. I come from a producer stroke artist background. Recently graduated off a master's in dance knowledge, practice and heritage, Erasmus Mundus program, where I travelled and studied for 2 years in 3 European countries and back in the UK. The idea is to produce a whole show, but because we're using a technique or we're using a methodology that hasn't been developed, the idea is to develop the methodology and then develop the show. We're developing a methodology through academia and practice. You generally see performance in terms of popping or hip-hop dances, and there's less attention paid to academia, so the theoretical side of things, contextualising the form and the structural analysis of the form.
My role in the project this week is as the popping practitioner, is the body and the kind of knowledge base. As a practitioner of popping, so looking at the mechanics of popping and what it involves to dance. Because it's about education, so it's kind of the changing awareness of popping and its place in education, as academic education, as social education and so on. It's kind of looking and broadening it and what is it, so if I'm doing this, we would call it the pop, but actually you're contracting your tricep. So it's just really trying to nail down the anatomy of it.
This week we've been coming together and basically finding a way that we can construct music to go with the dance that's representing what this project's about. I have basically started from scratch. I've consulted Yassmin and Robert and basically found out what the best angles are to take, the best type of rhythm, the best type of BPM, which is how fast the beat's going. So just how to transition between the two, and we ended up coming up with 3 different rhythm tracks to emphasise the dance technique.
I have an interest in the analysis of form. I actually have an interest in the analysis of movement. And this movement, in terms of popping, is for a purpose. So I'm trying to establish what the purpose is when somebody pops or does variations of popping. And what they're doing when they're doing it, but not just to answer what they're doing, to answer how they're doing it.
With Yassmin, it's more about using the outsider and the insider. Is just looking at that language and trying to fathom out how someone from the outside, we can begin to draw them into the language so they can understand it and see the nuances and the level of complexity that is done. Hip-hop practice at a certain level is quite for the initiated. That's actually what's going on. So, and one of the things we've said is unless us as practitioners engage within that process of development for everyone, it's going to be taken out of our hands. So it's been really important to start to structure how we let other people into the world. I'm
learning now, in fact. You know, I'm aware of it, but I didn't realise that there were certain particular rhythms that emphasise popping, which you've learned during this process. Once you learn that particular genre then becomes part of you. You become sort of like an extension of that genre. So you're contributing to it. So it is best sometimes to know what you're doing. It's actually quite new in terms of how to put everything together and the different transitions I had to make. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting experience.
The importance of the work and the importance of the process and the methodology is to build better audiences, enhance education, definitely enhance education. Okay, my name is Yassmin. Most of you know me, Yassmin Foster. On this project, I'm the researcher and movement analyst. This is Andre A.C. Layne, who's the music producer on this project. And I'd like this gentleman to introduce himself.
Hello. I'm Robert Hylton, choreographer, performer, teacher. coming at it from street contemporary dance, but popping being my primary, and I started popping in '82.
So I want to look at what's the smallest element of his dance form that tells us what he's doing. The value is lost in the dance when you assume that it's a natural ability. And it's not a natural ability. I'm looking towards interrogating the practice of dance of the African diaspora, black dance, African people dance, Caribbean people dance. I will continue to say all of them if you allow me to. Through the knowledge of the masters, choreographers, dancers, because people make dances. So we just have to speak to people about those dances. I describe the pop as a recognizable quality of movement executed by rhythmically contracting and releasing voluntary muscles. The music is open to interpretation, so the dancer must explore it. They have to. And not just one thing. Robert explained about being stuck in a rut and just finding the same...
Hitting the two. You can get caught in this net. You can call it two ways. And there's a melody, the kick, and all kinds of different music. Especially if you're battling, someone's missed a certain rhythm or a particular instrument, that will be shown to you. So that the layers of musical and instrumentation are becoming even more complicated. There's hip hop from the education from the 70s, Rocksteady Crew, Pop and P, and all that, and Cool Herc and that kind of 70s education.
We're ultimately telling the story on our own terms, and that's the idea behind the project. To tell the story and to enforce what it is that needs reinforcing by the people who practice it, not by the media or by whoever, just by the people who actually practice it. I think it's important in terms of having a legacy for the communities who practice it, who may not all be black.
Well, no.
But they practice it, and that's all that we're trying to get to. Legacy in terms of transmission, which is what Robert does, passing on from one to the next. Heritage, that big word that is bouncing around all over the place. When you're black, it's kind of difficult to even have a location, geographical location. And if you're just waving around, and for young people especially, who are being labelled and actually have to prescribe to labels, because Britain is a culture of self-identification, and we know that, and you self-identify when you feel out of place. What are you? I am, and you choose stuff, so it's choice as well. But that is the drive, and then to reinstill these things and have them trickle down in education, in academia, and in places where representation is really important. One is school, one is further education, one is higher education. I need to be represented. Blah, blah, blah needs to be represented. And you can only do that by enforcing it yourself. And that's the idea behind the research.